Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema Trip Reviews. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about Clerks III. Hey everybody, welcome to Cinema Trip Reviews. I am Wyatt, and today we're going to be talking about Clerks III, directed by Kevin Smith. Before we get into the show, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Cinema Trip Views, and check out our Anchor and Linktree pages, or wherever you get your podcasts to find us there and give us a good review. A little backstory here. I am actually a pretty big Kevin Smith fan. Growing up, I just grew up watching all of his movies, from Clerks to Dogma, Mallrats. I didn't really get into Chasing Amy and didn't really appreciate it until I was older. But of course, Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back was huge at the time, and it's still a fucking hilarious movie. It's been a while since I've seen Clerks 2, but I did enjoy it. It wasn't as good as that original first one. That first one, man, it's such like an indie cult classic, at this point, and there really isn't anything else like it, and especially from that time even up until today. It was kind of lightning trapped in a bottle. And now everybody kind of has their own opinion on Kevin Smith, especially within the past like 10 years or so, because he has released some movies that I'm not really that fond of, like Yoga Hosers. Tusk was okay. I appreciated what he was trying to do with it, but the reason I'm a big fan of Kevin Smith is not just the work that he does in the movies that he puts out. He really makes movies for himself and for his fans. And that's what I really like, and especially like Jay and Silent Bob reboot, and even with Clerks 3 here. Clerks 3, it feels like such a love letter to not just the View Askew universe, but just Clerks in general and these characters and the movies that Kevin Smith has made. I didn't really know what to expect coming into Clerks, other than just like, the typical Kevin Smith humor that he has. But this movie is vastly different from like Clerks 2 and some of the other stuff that he's done. I'm going to go as far to say that this is Kevin Smith's best movie he's made in years. I laughed in this movie out loud. I cried in this movie. I'm not, afraid to say, man, this movie had me shed some tears in it. It hits you right in the feels. It's a heartbreaking movie. I know that may sound surprising to some people, but overall, I really dug this movie. I really enjoyed it. And I know a lot of people are kind of going into it like with very low expectations, especially based off of Kevin Smith's work here over the past like 10 years or so, which is, it's understandable. But you hop right back into the quick stop without missing a beat. These characters are the same characters you saw from the very first Clerks into the second one into this one. You get Dante and Randal. You even get Elias from Clerks 2 coming into there. And of course, you get Jay and Silent Bob as well. For Clerks 3, this is kind of a really toned down version of what I really expected. I thought I was going to be kind of off the wall, ridiculous humor that Kevin Smith is known for, like what he jokes about in his other movies, like these dick and fart jokes. You get some of that typical Kevin Smith humor, but this movie, man, it has a lot of heart to it, and that's what I really appreciate. Because Kevin Smith, like I mentioned, around the time of Red State and Tusk, up to Yoga Hosers and Jay and Silent Bob reboot, Kevin Smith has really went back to going independent wise, making independent movies, and I think that's really kind of it definitely had its misses, but it also has its hits as well, because I really liked Red State. I liked parts of Tusk. Michael Parks is great in that movie. I like Justin Long as well. Go watch my Barbarian review. Justin Long is great in that. I'm a fan of Justin Long. But this movie, I think if he would have done it with a bigger studio, I don't know if he would have got this same movie, where he has complete creative control. He gets to do whatever he wanted on a low budget. The low budget doesn't really show. Now, there are some nitpicks that people are going to have with this movie, including myself. Some of the humor is very hit and miss. Like there's some jokes in the movie that just completely fall flat for me. Some of the acting in certain parts is a little like, it's a little rough in certain parts, even with like Dante and Randal. But for the most part, I think the acting is pretty damn good throughout most of this movie, especially where it needs to be, with a lot of these dramatic parts in this movie that really works and really pulls on your heartstrings a little bit. Basic premise of the movie that you get in the trailers is Dante and Randal own the Quick Stop now. They went into business together. Elias is working there. Kevin Smith has incorporated a lot of his real life experiences into this movie, like the heart attack that he had a couple years ago. he incorporated that because Randal has a heart attack here towards the beginning of the movie, and that really makes him realize that he hasn't done anything with his life this whole time except sit around the quick stop talking about movies, talking about Star Wars and shit. So he really wants to do something with his life, and because his life has been so involved with movies, he decides to make a movie. And what movie does he decide to make? It's Clerks. So you get a lot of recreations of scenes from Clerks. You get a lot of returning characters coming back from the original Clerks you haven't seen in all these years. And it doesn't do it in such a cliche or, cringy way that you would see some of these other movies have their callbacks to. It does it in a very loving and caring way. You can really get the feeling that Kevin Smith cares about these characters and cares about this universe that he set up. And I love how they are recreating certain scenes from Clerks, and they're shooting it in black and white, and they explain why they're doing that. And just because I know some of the backstory of the making of Clerks, watching this, you really get to see some of the real life stuff that came up and issues that happened when they were originally filming Clerks, like having to film it in black and white, Jason Mewes kind of getting camera shy, and they had to kind of work around that in certain parts. A lot of the independent filmmaking troubles that you may have are incorporated into this movie as well, and a lot of the real life experiences that Kevin Smith had are incorporated into this movie as well. But it does a great job of capturing the essence of these characters. It feels like a real place. I mean, it is a real place, but it feels like these characters are real, and you're spending time with them for going on almost 2 hours. Now, there is some certain spot to this movie where there's a little bit of a lull into it, but I don't think it hurts it that much because there is some witty dialogue in this. There are some spots of the movie that are a little stretched out and that could have been cut down. Specifically, there's a scene where they're doing the casting for the movie, and the casting is pretty much just a bunch of cameos of Kevin Smith's friends that he's worked with for all these years. And I liked some of it, but man, it goes on for way too long, and there's a lot of jokes in there that just don't hit right. They're misses, and they just don't land. Jay and Silent Bob are in this movie. You get them a handful of times. They're not the ridiculous, wacky, crazy Jay and Silent Bob that you're used to. They're very kind of toned down a little bit, because this movie is really about Dante and Randal and their friendship and using these years wisely, because you know that you don't have a lot of time on this earth. So you got to do what you want and do what you feel like you're made to do in this world. And that's exactly what they're doing with making Clerks, making the movie within the movie. If you're a fan of Kevin Smith and you're a really big fan of Clerks 1 and 2, you're going to love this movie. I think this movie is better than Clerks 2. From what I remember, I've seen it a couple times. It was never my favorite movie out of the Kevin Smith, filmography. But I think this movie is better than Clerks 2. I mean, Clerks 1 is obviously, top tier as far as that goes. But man, this movie really did a great job. And I did laugh out loud multiple times throughout this movie. There are a lot of funny parts. There's a couple there's a couple reoccurring jokes throughout the movie. And normally when that happens, they kind of get very eye-rolling or like, all right, you can stop doing this now. But man, I feel like every time it would come up for these couple reoccurring jokes, I would still laugh every time. So he found a way to kind of place them in the correct spots going throughout the movie here. This is definitely worth the watch if you are a fan of Kevin Smith and the View Askew universe and, the Clerks movies in general. I highly recommend going to watch it. You're going to have to bring some tissues, though, because you will probably cry. You will shed some tears in this movie. It hits you right in the feels. And this is something that really Kevin Smith, I don't think, has been able to do in quite a long time as far as that. Because the last real movie I remember, and Kevin Smith making that really pulled on the heartstrings was like Chasing Amy. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, that movie, it's a drama, of course, and there's a lot of stuff going into it. But man, this movie is definitely one of the best movies that Kevin Smith has made in quite some time. I know that with success of sequels, it brings, the studios are like, hey, this one did well. Maybe you want to go out and make another one. I'm really hoping Kevin Smith doesn't go out and make a Clerks 4, because the way that this one ended, man, I feel like it would be kind of not doing it any justice by going back and doing a Clerks 4 after this. I feel like this was the perfect bookend for this franchise. I would really only recommend it if you have seen Clerks 1 and 2 or are familiar with the Kevin Smith universe, US universe, because this movie is based around those movies, and there's a lot of inside jokes, not just from Clerks, but from like Dogma, Mallrats, and going forwards. Pretty much any movie that Kevin Smith has made, there's some form of, reference or Easter egg in this movie about it. And it was really cool seeing the filmmaking side of this. They do talk about some of the filmmaking stuff and script writing and some of the troubles about going out and making a movie. And man, one thing that this movie does is it makes you want to go out and make a movie. Like if you're so into movies like I am, or anybody else that's making reviews or has a YouTube channel, it really inspires you to want to go out there and make your own movie, make your own content. And that's really what Kevin Smith has been preaching all these years. Like whenever he has like these live Q&A shows and stuff, is like, man, take a bet on yourself, go out and do what you want. If you have a dream, go out there and try to accomplish it, because he was just a kid growing up in New Jersey that wanted to make a movie, and he was able to do it. And like what he even says, he got lucky and he was able to make movies all these years. So it's like, if he can do it, anybody can do it. And I mean, and that's also a message in this movie as well. And man, it hits home. And I think that's a thing about this as well, is because even though this movie is about Dante and Randal, it's really about friendship and friends and being together with each other for all these years. So anybody that has a close group of friends or a couple best friends that they're had throughout all these years, this movie is going to hit home for you. And I think that's why it hit me so hard. And I had to shed some tears in this movie. This was a heartbreaking movie. It has, Kevin Smith did a great job with the script in this. I think there were some hits and misses with the jokes, but a lot of them did hit. A lot of good references in there, a lot of cool cameos in there as well. But yeah, for anybody who hasn't seen it, definitely go out and watch it here when it comes out on Blu-ray and DVD or on a VOD as well, because this was only a limited run in theaters for a week here. And I'm glad I got to catch it in theaters, because there was a little intro by Kevin Smith leading into the movie as well, which was pretty cool. Just going into the spoilers a little bit here, it was cool seeing a lot of the throwbacks, them playing hockey on the rooftop, seeing the old quick stop and them working the quick stop, seeing a lot of these characters coming back, a lot of references from the original Clerks and Clerks 2 going to the Movies restaurant and everything. Like I mentioned, this movie is about friendship with Dante and Randal, but it is also about grief and grieving and really thinking about life in general, and that life is too short, and trying to do with what you have and the time you have left in this world. Rosario Dawson is in the movie. Kevin Smith has been like having little interviews and Q&As with her and bringing her on his shows and stuff recently. I thought she was going to have a bigger role in this movie. But this is spoilers here, but it turns out that her and Dante got married after Clerks 2. They did have a kid, but she ends up dying in a car crash because of a drunk driver. Through a lot of this movie, Dante is having like visions of her. He ends up going to her grave at one point, and it's such a heartbreaking scene where he's just overall, even all these years later, because I think she died in 2006 in the movie, he still can't get over her to move on. He's still stuck in his ways, and he just can't find the urge to move on because he loved her so much. He thought that he had the perfect life. He was starting a family. He thought he had it all figured out, and then it was just suddenly take away from him. And it's such a heartbreaking scene when he's sitting there crying at the cemetery talking with her, and she's just telling him like, hey, you gotta move on. You can't hold yourself back all these years just because of me. Like, you can't bring me back. You have to move on and find that next step in your life to make yourself happy. And that's just one of the heartbreaking spots. But the real one that got me at the end of the movie here, they're filming the end of Clerks where Dante and Randal have their falling out and they're fighting within the quick stop. Kevin Smith really filmed this well, because in that scene when they're kind of going back and forth and insulting each other before they get into a fight, it's cutting back and forth between black and white and color, where black and white, you're seeing the actual film being made and what they're supposed to be saying. But whenever it cuts to color where they're saying these things, you really feel like what they're saying is real and that they actually mean it. They're not just saying the words that are on the script. Whatever they're saying, they're meaning at this point. And this leads to a huge fight and altercation between, and you've gotten this between the first two movies where Dante just calls out Randal for being fucking selfish and thinking of himself this whole time and thinking that Dante didn't have a hand in making this movie when he was one of the real reasons that Randal's movie was getting made in the first place. At that point, Dante has a heart attack. And then he goes into the hospital, and then Randal, he has to deal with it. Because in the beginning of the movie, Randal has it. Dante's with him every step of the way. Even when he's in surgery, Dante's out there worrying about him in the waiting room and waiting. And then when Dante has the heart attack, he's in the hospital. Randal's just thinking about going back home and finishing his movie because he can't do anything there. And Elias, he just calls him out for it. Like, you are a fucking selfish prick. Like, what are you doing? He's been here the whole step of the way. Your whole life he's been there with you, and you're going to treat him like this. But he ends up going home and finishing the movie, and he sneaks back into the hospital, and he's showing Dante these things. And Dante, he's in a way worse situation than Randal was when he had his heart attack. Because as they said, you have an 80% chance of dying. There's only a 20% chance of surviving this type of heart attack, which is called the Widowmaker, which is what Kevin Smith had. And man, I'm getting teary-eyed just thinking about it at this point. But he goes in, and Dante's laying in the hospital bed with the tubes and everything hanging out of his mouth. He's not in a good spot. And man, Randal just kind of breaks down, and he's like, I'm so sorry. And I just wanted you to see everything that we've done. And I want you to see the movie that we finished, that you were a part of. That he finally realizes, like, this wouldn't have happened without you. None of this, not even just the movie, but none of the stuff that's even in the movie would have happened without you. Like, you were my Luke Skywalker. You were the main character in my movie this whole time. And as Dante's laying there, he's talking with them, they're crying. He puts the movie on for them, which is Clerks. And you pretty much get a lot of these scenes from Clerks and Clerks II, not recreated, but the actual scenes from the movie. So Dante's sitting there watching pretty much his whole life in an hour and a half, 2 hours. And while he's watching it, in his head, he's like in the movie theater with his wife, with Rosario Dawson, watching this. And he realizes that he's had a good life. He's had great friends. He's had great experiences. And he realizes that the best part of his life was his wife and his kid. And he doesn't think that it's going to get any better than that. So at this point in time, he's ready to go. He's ready to, be with his wife and child. He's ready to move on. So they get up and they walk out of the theater. And by doing so, he pretty much gives his life. He gives up just so he can, go into the afterlife and spend time with his wife and be where he is truly happy. And man, I mean, it's getting me choked up talking about it, but whenever it shows him dying in the hospital bed, and Randal just has to come to terms with that, and he starts crying. And man, it is such a heartbreaking scene. But anybody who's had a friend like that can really, really understand that situation and really understand their relationship together. You get to see that funeral with, Randal giving his eulogy and everything. And then you get to finally see Randal working at the Quick Stop, kind of not by himself because he has Elias, and he promotes Elias to Dante's job. So they're sitting there behind the counter together, and then you get Jay and Silent Bob coming in. And you really kind of get a new start to Randal's life. Because not only did he have a heart attack, but he had to witness his friend die on top of that. So I think at this point, Randal's going to try to go out and make the best of his life that he possibly can. This movie worked. And I mean, as you can see, it worked. I'm getting choked up right now talking about it, thinking about it a day later. I watched it last night. But man, in the theater, I was looking like Kevin Smith nowadays, crying. But man, I really love this movie, and honestly, I can't wait to watch it again. And this was such a great experience and a great love letter to these characters and to this world that Kevin Smith has made. And you can really tell that he put his heart and soul into this project, that this is the project he's really wanted to make all this time. I think as far as the Clerks universe, it needs to just let it be. Let it go. This was the perfect send-off for these characters. For anybody that has been a fan of Kevin Smith or has been a fan of these movies, I highly recommend going out and checking it out. It is worth it. And I'm definitely going to go out and buy it here once it comes out on Blu-ray eventually as well. I'm hoping they release like a triple pack of all three on Blu-ray or some sort of collector's edition. I would definitely go out and try to buy that one. But yeah, that's the review here for this week. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at SquadPodSports. Oh my gosh. But yeah, that's a review for this week. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to go follow us on Twitter at CinemaTripViews. Make sure to go check out our Anchor and Linktree pages, or make sure to go like, share, but that's a review for this week. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to go follow us on Twitter at CinemaTripViews, and make sure to go check us out where you check out your podcasts. But yeah, that's the show for this week. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to follow us at Twitter. But yeah, that's a review for this week. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to go check us out. Oh my gosh. But yeah, that's a review for this week. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at CinemaTripViews. And also check us out wherever podcasts are available, because But yeah, that's a show for this week. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to go follow us on YouTube at CinemaTripViews. And also go check us out wherever you find your podcasts. They're available pretty much everywhere. And make sure to leave us a good review on those as well. And we'll see everybody next week. But yeah, that's a show for this week. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to... But yeah, that's a show for this week. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to follow us on... But yeah, that's a review for this week. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at CinemaTripViews. And also make sure to check us out wherever you get your podcasts. And also leave us a good review there as well. And we'll see everybody next week.